Thank you, Przemek. It's really great that Marcin gave the presentation before, even if it was in Polish. It was telling all about the data processing and modern data stack that Airflow is all about, and it's trying to bring Airflow, bring this data stack together. And I will start this presentation from explaining a little bit my background. I'm an Apache Airflow PMC member and committer. And there were some questions about open source sustainability. I'm an individual contributor and advisor in open source. So I don't have a boss. I don't have an employer. I just work for myself. And this works very nicely for open source. I contribute to open source 150% of my time, all the time. I'm also a member of Apache Software Foundation, and that's a very important point for the licenses and open source questions that were asked at the previous presentation. I'm also a member of Apache Software Foundation Security Committee. I'm a big fan of security, and I've been working there for a long time. And security is a big part of what I'm going to talk about as well. I will explain why a little bit later. Those are the links. I'm just moving out of Twitter. So like Mastodon and Blue Sky, like most of my friends and my friends, colleagues. So those are the places where you can follow me, not Twitter anymore. So what is Airflow? You've seen the modern data stack, so those who were there before at the previous presentation. Those are all the different services. I've got a few of them. Marcin showed a lot more, and there are even more and more and more. And I'm a choirist. I'm a amateur musician. I sang for 30 years in a choir. So my metaphor and explanation of Airflow is very simple. It's like a conductor in the orchestra. And so you have all the pieces in the modern data stack that are doing something and exchanging the data using those modern interfaces that we've heard at the previous presentation as well. Various ways. You transfer the data, you query the data, you ingest the data. And there are many different instruments, like in an orchestra, like different tools that you can use. And you can do simple things like what was mentioned before, like put together a simple script in Python or Bash, God forbid. I did a lot of Bash in my life. Removed 10,000 lines of code quite recently, and that in Bash, and I'm super happy about that. So you can have a Python script to do stuff and move the data between places, or process them in different ways. But at some point of time, when your company grows and when your needs grow, your startup is becoming bigger, your corporate is having more and more departments, you suddenly start to feel that you need to do something with your data pipelines to put them together and organize them in a good way and manage them in a good way. Because you have so many of them. You don't have one or two, you have hundreds. You have thousands of tasks, thousands of things that depend on each other. And at the very beginning, you can do it very easily with some scripts or some simple tools. But Airflow comes there to make sure that those many different pipelines and many tools and instruments, they can play together, play together. They can work together and produce the data that you need in a very nicely orchestrated way, hence the name orchestrator as well. And then allows a very small group of people. If you have big company, it allows a very small group of people just to look at all your data pipelines, make sense of them, see what's going on, and when there is something wrong, analyze that and see how they can reprocess the data, fix the data, see that they can optimize this here or here, observe the data, personally identifiable information mentioned as well at the previous presentation, track how it changes when it is transmitted from one place to another. And Airflow is a tool, a conductor, or orchestrator, to put those things together and observe them and monitor. That's basically what Airflow does. So basically, it's like a conductor. It does nothing. I mean, the image, the conductor has written bow the stick, and when the music stops playing, go back and thank the audience. So Airflow does nothing, which means that it does a lot so that everyone else does a lot of things in the right way, in orchestrated way. And why Airflow 3? So I'm going to talk today about something that is coming next year. Not like we are December, so it's like next year starts like soon. Oh, Jesus. No. Airflow has a long history. So Airflow is started in 2015 in Airbnb. Then it was donated to Apache Software Foundation to incubate in Apache Software Foundation. I will tell a little bit about that in a moment. It became a top-level project in 2019. By the way, who here uses Airflow and knows what Airflow is? I see maybe 20% of people. That's good. That's really good. But not everyone knows the history. So it was the top-level project. This is more or less the time when I joined the project as well, 2019. I'm contributing for 6 years now, almost. Then we developed Airflow 2 in 2021, and we released it. And then we started to release very frequently new versions with new features. This is the kind of history of Airflow. And Airflow traditionally comes from the ingestion ETL kind of work, extract, transform, load. So basically what also Martin explained on the previous presentation, just getting data from one place to another place and make sure that it's moved between those places efficiently. And we've been doing that from the very beginning. So we are very experienced in that. Like Airflow is really good in that. And it's super used. We'll show some numbers soon. But we reached some limits. So we got to the point that we think Airflow 3 is needed because we know the strengths of Airflow. So we have a huge user base and community. Airflow is the absolutely most popular orchestrator out there. Like there is like no comparison with any other. It's an open source, fully and truly open source under the Apache Software Foundation. We have a huge community of users, contributors, and stakeholders, which is like, we have like 3,000 contributors, more than 3,000 contributors right now. More or less 200 of them contributes regularly right now. So a lot of people are contributing. We have, when we first started Airflow Summit, which is a conference we organized, we had 10,000 people online at the conference, which was a lot. Physically in San Francisco last year, we had 600 people. So you can imagine that the community of our users is quite big. It's very versatile. You can do lots of stuff, not only transferring the data, but also setting up infrastructure and all the other automation tools that you would like to organize and orchestrate. We have steady stream of new features coming, and we've been learning from the industry. So there are other orchestrators, smaller and bigger, and other approaches for like simple, like DLT, for example, simple processing or focusing on simplifications of writing your scripts. And we've been like looking and implementing those features and like different features when they made sense, at the time when they make sense, and we started to implement those, as you saw the sequence of versions. But it has also some weaknesses. Airflow has some weaknesses. It's rooted in ETL, so ETL is the primary use case. The architecture of UI of Airflow, I will show in the moment, was not really fully modernized. It was getting better and better, but it's like it has some legacy or heritage. Legacy, heritage, depends. It has weak support for AI, even though, or machine learning workflows. Traditionally, the data transfers, machine learning workflows appeared only last year-ish, 2 years maybe, really, in the mainstream. And even though Airflow doesn't have a very strong support for it, 30% of our users already use Airflow for machine learning workflows. So it's there, but not perfect. We have like change management problems with our DAGs, which are the workflows essentially. It's complex to install it, and because it has a lot of dependencies, and the learning curve is a little bit steep. Just like it takes a little bit of time to learn how to develop Airflow workflows and manage it. And why now? Why are we moving now? Because the machine learning AI workflows is the main focus. We want to be like have them as a first-class citizens. Our users have different needs, like they are not experienced Python developers, all of them, because Airflow is all in Python. They might need have simpler needs, be able to run little simple things. So the skills are proliferating. They are not all experienced Python developers. And Python is winning, but it's not the only tool in data. There are other languages, C++, Go, Rust, and many other languages that people write a lot of data processing libraries in right now. So we had to recognize that this is also a thing, and we want to support those. There is a technical depth piling in Airflow, so there are a number of things that we couldn't do because we had to be backwards compatible. And the last thing, like Airflow traditionally, this ETL processing was like processing batch data. That was really like data intervals and processing data in batches. But streaming is becoming more and more important and popular, and we would like to support, I call it like streamish experience, not streaming experience, like streamish, where those batches getting smaller and much more frequent, and we need to support those things, those streamish experiences. So what kind of, like, we have some principles that we approach Airflow 2.3 development. First of all, it's gonna be still mostly compatible, so all the features all the really useful and popular features in Airflow 2 are gonna work in Airflow 3. There is smooth migration for existing users. Even if they are not exactly the same features, we will move them with some tooling. AI machine learning data workflows are first-class citizens. We are going to support them as something that we will tell you how to do it best. We want to enhance scalability, performance, and security, because a lot of our users are enterprise users, so they are focused and they really want to get a tool that will fulfill their security expectation, their scalability expectations. We have some users that are running hundreds, thousands of tasks an hour, and we want to be able to scale to that, to those expectations. And we introduced some architectural changes to do that. Something that was also mentioned recently, the partitions and Parquet, Arrow, partitioning the data and data assets are becoming the first-class citizen. There is an SQL, which we already support fairly well, different kinds of SQL workloads, but we want to also support better partitioning of assets and data partitions, so that you can, for example, process only certain partitions of iceberg, and retrieve it and transform it and move it somewhere else. Then we want to also make Airflow easier to deploy and learn. So those are the principles. And I'll show a few screens and little bit details of what is going to change for those who, or what we are focusing on and working on. For those who already know Airflow, that will be, okay, this is what's going to change. But for those who have never used Airflow, I will explain a little bit more. UI, we have like 3 Airflow improvement proposals. And this is a kind of like screenshot of a new modern UI of Airflow, where you will be able to like see a dashboard of things happening. This is something that is coming. Yeah? Very nicely putting together all the data in React, very nice reactive UI, which will be very responsive. Things like that, being able to see what's happening with your workflows, when they are processed. And generally much nicer look and feel, including colorblind themes and dark theme as well. Like dark theme is already there, but all the new kind of UI experience that you would expect from a modern tool. These kind of things, like showing history of your runs of your data and processing your data and types, and being able to easily navigate it. So this is the kind of preview of what's coming. The important one is that we currently when you defined your workflows, you were not able to see to run different versions of DAGs across the time. Like the version change was not really easy or even impossible. So we always recommended people to go and create a new DAG when their structure changes. So right now things will appear like the DAGs and DAG runs will have its own versions, and you will be able to switch between them and see the different versions of those tasks. It's a little bit not too visible, like a little bit too light screen. But there will be some different ways how you can rerun historical version of the DAG, run the new version of the DAG, and manage versioning in this case. History will not be lost, and you will be able to find your ways on how your data processing evolved over time. But the biggest change, and this is like a huge change from the Airflow perspective, how we think about scalability, performance, and responding to these enterprise needs, is the task isolation. So task isolation means that we will be able to completely split the kind of central part of Airflow, which is currently using database, and for now, database is kind of central piece where all the tasks and all the components of Airflow are communicating with. So you have to have a database connection there. Right now, we are separating that out, and we'll have a separate data on one side. There could be a firewall between the central Airflow scheduler, web server that you run your scheduling on, but your workers and execution of your workload can be happening somewhere else. Like, for example, you can have a central location for Airflow and installed in one data center, but all your workloads are running in another data center or another cloud or on premises, depending where you want to run it, and they communicate over HTTPS, which was the biggest kind of problem with current Airflow infrastructure, because for example, you couldn't, like, one of the examples and is already used by, like, the preview version of this is already used by one of our PMC members, is like running Airflow tasks as individual tasks on a small pieces of hardware that you run, like Raspberry Pis or different kinds of hardware. This was not possible because you had to install those the whole Airflow basically on all those workers where you executed the task. Right now it's going to be completely different. This will be a much smaller library that you will be able to run your task with. And that is done by a special designed task SDK, where there is no direct DB access for tasks. There are much smaller set of dependencies. And the important part there is that there is no non-Python native support. So you'll also be able to run your task not as Python code, but also as a like Go, Java, whatever language, C, Rust implementation. And there is this remote task execution that allows you to only run a very small task execution piece on a remote system. This is something that is important, and what we want to achieve with that, and coming back to this streamish kind of experience, is that the overhead of running the task will be much smaller than it is currently in Airflow, which means that each task can be much smaller and execute much faster, and you can run many more of those, which also means that the kind of stream experience, when you have lots and lots of messages coming very quickly, will be possible to be executed in Airflow, getting us closer to like Flink, maybe not Kafka yet, but maybe to Flink, if you know Flink. It's going to be, so the overhead will be much smaller. It's going to be very ready for inference. So you'll be able to inference, like run your machine learning inference workflows on Airflow, which means that it will be fast enough that you will be able to ask questions and get answer in like nearly real time. This is the kind of benchmark that we are using there. And also like running batch inference, that's going to be possible. So it's almost streaming, like the streamish kind of experience. We also implement external event-driven scheduling, so you'll be able to just start your workflow from external, pinging the Airflow, and then say, okay, start me the new, start this workflow, because like a new file appeared in S3, for example, and you will be able to do that. The edge execution I already explained. This is kind of small agent executing somewhere on the edge on like small device that will be able to run task with very low overhead, with enterprise security. So all the communication between Airflow executor or worker and the central server will be secure using HTTPS. It will support multiple platforms, so the execution will be possible not only on Linux as it is currently, but also on different platforms, on Windows, for example. And it will have support for multiple languages. DAG authoring. So it will be very easy right now to define connection between different tasks exchanging data. Right now it was a little bit problematic the way how you defined inputs and outputs from Airflow. It was kind of oldish experience, but with the new asset definition that we are introducing in Airflow 3, you will be able to define the definition of the files that you are exchanging, and those assets will support not only the inputs and outputs, but also schedules. So when particular asset will change, it will trigger one DAG, or one DAG can produce another asset, and it will trigger another DAG. This is already possible today, actually, but what we are going to implement is that the asset partitioning. So you will be able to, and this goes back to the iceberg and a kind of columnar data format and partitioning which comes there. So you will be able to connect partitions coming from different schedules, partitions of differently partitioned data, and you will be able to, for example, in one schedule produce n partitions of the data. They are not connected to this. Like so far in Airflow, schedule was actually equal to partition. Right now, you will be able to schedule synchronizing multiple partitions or smaller partitions or bigger partitions in a single schedule. So this is a big change in the way how we are thinking about Airflow. It's not the DAG thinking or the task thinking, but it's more in the asset thinking. Like we have assets, they can be partitioned and they can be processed by definition of those partitions. One thing that a lot of people asked us, and something that we've implemented, we are implementing in Airflow 3. So far, Airflow was very kind of slowly parsing and reprocessing all the DAG definitions that were there in a single folder, single file, single folder where all the DAGs were stored. In the new Airflow 3, we are going to have bundles. So you will be able to define that this particular set of DAG files will not be parsed regularly all the time, but they will be only triggered on a change, which was a big issue so far, because Airflow was actually processing them all the time, continuously. And then you will also be able to define the how frequently as they are processed, whether they are triggered on change or whether they are not triggered only on change or also on change and every 5 minutes. And you will be able to version those. So bundles of DAGs will actually define you also this group, this DAG group is together versioned. So you will be able to run a particular bundle of DAGs in version that it was like today or yesterday or 5 days ago. You will be able to see that as a single bundle, like the name says, of particular version of all the files in there. So this is something that we are implementing right now. So far we have like DAG file processor where we have single DAG bundle when we single DAG file, DAG folder, but we will have DAG bundle backend that will be able to put the DAGs together. And also what is implemented there, this DAG bundle will be able to get the data from different sources. So you will be able to get the data directly from Git, for example, when you publish your files to a Git folder. That might be a single bundle that you will be able to pull in as a set of DAGs. And this DAG bundle backend will be interchangeable. You will be able to exchange and even write your own. Easy deployment and running. We are going to improve like standalone Airflow experience. It's going to be far easier to start and run Airflow for a small installation and single person. We are going to improve a lot messaging and debugging. So we ran a survey, and we have a lot of changes coming in as a result of this survey to make it much easier to analyze and see what's going on in Airflow. We have some separate dependencies. So far, Airflow has like one big set of dependencies, but we are now splitting Airflow in smaller components, which means that those dependencies will be completely, there will be different sets of those dependencies coming from different parts of Airflow, which means that all the conflicts and problems with running Airflow in a big, single monolithical way will be gone. We are decoupling authentication authorization. This is part of the security and enterprise readiness. And we will have some enterprise-grade deployment options. With, I mentioned the Edge executor, for example, with all the HTTPS and firewalls, communication in a secure way between different components. Coming to the security, I'm a big fan of, or big passionate security engineer. Working in the security committee of Apache Software Foundation. We have invested a lot of effort into making Airflow secure already. So Airflow is this is like part of something which is called Salsa threat model, which means that when you build and release Airflow, you have a number of places where your security of your system can be compromised. Those red boxes here. And we've pretty much, we cannot say that Airflow is secure, but we work on hardening all the parts. So whatever we release with Airflow right now, in pretty much all of those places, we have some security protections put in place. That's been like investment that we've done over the last year or so. And that was done with the number of external funds that we received for that. But right now, what we are working on, and this is a project that I'm personally working on, we are working on securing our dependencies, because Airflow has right now 719 dependencies, a lot. Airflow is a huge, because of the number of components we are integrating with lots of libraries. So we are actually helping our dependencies to improve their security, and we are funneling the funds which are coming from funds like Alpha Omega, who are also supporting Python Software Foundation. They gave us money, and we ran together a project to identify and help dependencies to build or improve their security, not only our security. And some future that is coming, like we have a React UI plugins so that you will be able to write your own plugins and modify Airflow behavior on the UI level, not as it was before on a kind of Flask Python level. We have backfills that will be controlled by UI, which means that you will be able to reprocess your data from the web server and from the API. Not so far you had to do some CLI running in a weird way in the backend. We will add explicit template fields that will make it easier to define templates and conditional processing of your DAGs. So that's just I will not go into details. It's just a list of things that we are working on right now. We have open lineage integration, so data observability is already built in Airflow, but we have this auto-hook instrumentation, which will make it much more powerful. So you'll be able to see your personal identifiable data flowing through your system with much more like out of the box from many different places, from many different integrations. We have a multi-team work coming as a kind of future work, which means that in single installations of Airflow, you will be able to run multiple teams with different dependencies and working independently from each other, not interrupting with each other. and automatic asset auto read write. So whenever something is written to the asset, you will be able to schedule the kind of streaming of new data that is coming to this asset. We are super active. So this is like a second week of November. We had like 140 pull requests merged, so progress is quite huge. 50 opened and 37 closed, 49 new issues, 37 closed issues, 49 open pull requests during that time. It's just 1 week. And you can see we have like 60 authors who pushed 130 commits. And yeah, lots of lines of code change. So the work is ongoing, and we have a lot of effort put into making Airflow 3 happening. More than 3,000 contributors, lots of users. How the Airflow 3 migration will affect our users? Well, if you haven't used Airflow for in a kind of special way, if you followed our guidelines and best practices, your migration should be very, very smooth. This is our priority. We will make sure that you will be able to test and flag in 2.11 version of Airflow. You will be able to see if you are compliant, if no warnings are generated, and your DAGs are going to work in Airflow, and then your migration will be pretty smooth. So the idea is you should be able to migrate very efficiently and quickly. We've learned from Airflow 2 what was difficult from Airflow 1 to Airflow 2 migration. We are going to learn from that and prepare you give you some tools that will make it super easy to migrate. So generally speaking, existing users should not be affected. However, new users will be able to already start using all these new features like machine learning workflows, inference, and a number of things that I was talking about before from get-go. When it's going to happen in our plans is to release Airflow in Q2 2025, which is 4 months from now, more or less. That's where the first version of Airflow 3 will be available. And yeah, that's about it. And I'm looking forward to questions. Okay, so the question was, and I repeat for the recording, like how Airflow will be better for, or what we are focusing on in terms of machine learning inference workflows. Like, first of all, we know that we are not a machine learning dedicated tool that people want to use. Like the data or machine learning engineers, they usually use something that like Kubeflow, MLflow, a number of other tools that are making things, making it easier to iterate on and develop machine learning workflows. We are not trying to compete with that. Airflow is more of a platform that allows you to integrate whatever you produce there in Airflow executions and making production ready. So like whatever you come up as a result of those iterations and processing of machine learning workflows, we will be able to very easily integrate and expose as our kind of Airflow tasks that we will be able to run from Airflow. The way how we are going to make it easier for machine learning is like we will be able to, like we are decreasing the overhead that Airflow has for running all those single tasks, which means that lots of those tasks can be, like a lot of them can be run independently and smaller and faster, and the data exchange between them will be faster. We are going to put execution, like allow to put execution of tasks in the same machines or in the same nodes, like for easier exchanging of data between the tasks through the memory using like Arrow, for example, or all the like for example Arrow, and the big part of what we are trying to achieve is to make it possible for the inference kind of quick loop through Airflow possible. So this is like we are not going to have like we already have dedicated operators and providers to integrate with those number of tools. It's just to making this work efficiently and in more organized. Outside, so we'll just make it possible to run MLflow flows from Airflow much more easily, for example. Yeah. I hope I answered a little the question. Yes.
About remote task execution, how is it going to look like? Will it impact resource requirements for the platform itself? For one of our clients, for example, we have a dedicated platform team that is setting up Airflow, and we as an application team, we could onboard to that, right? But there are quite, for at least in our case, they require us to have a cluster that have, for example, 15 cores, right?
Mm-hmm.
So gigabytes of memory, and
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of hard, I would say, right? But will it be simplified in terms of this remote task execution in future version?
Okay, so the question is like, is the resource usage going to be simplified in the future version and like the requirements smaller for the remote execution, remote or edge execution workflows? Yeah. That's a very broad and generic question, but generally speaking, the idea is that the task executing will take, each of those tasks will take far less resources than it's taking right now, because right now it's really like separate Python interpreter with all the dependencies loaded, and you really need a lot of like substantial machine to run the tasks. The idea is that if you have your tasks smaller that can only like either executing as a native language like Go, Java, whatever language you want, and execute that on your machine, and it has enough resources to run it, the overhead that Airflow that will introduce for those tasks will be very small. So generally your resource usage will be smaller for those task executions. Not sure if that will change the kind of interaction. Like there is this part of interaction between the platform team that sets up the Airflow and your team running it. So this multi-team part, which is coming in the following version of Airflow, it will allow you to manage your own smaller resources and connect Airflow to those resources of yours and only run your DAGs on your resources and not on resources of other teams, which is maybe something that allows you to manipulate those resources and move them. Like, if one team has bigger needs and another has smaller needs, you can shuffle that around. I don't know if that answer your question a little. Yes.
So if I'm starting a new project from scratch right now, and I'm considering to use Airflow, should I consider to start it with Airflow 3 right now, or should I?
Airflow 3 is not yet ready for use. It's in development.
I believe it will not be production ready, this project, in like 4 or 5 months. So.
Well, the migration is going to be smooth. So you can easily, if you want to start an experiment with Airflow 2 right now, that definitely go and do it. Like we don't like.
So I should start at Airflow 2 and then migrate it in like 5-6 months.
Especially if you want to do something, an exploration, proof of concept, something that like you want to see if your data platform is ready for, prepared for production, then you won't be able to run Airflow 3 for a few months. Yeah, but so start with Airflow 2. If you will start doing that in few months, then yeah, like start with Airflow 3, of course. Yes.
My question is related to DAG versions. Do you plan a possibility to choose a version you want to run a pipeline? So I see a case when we have a couple of changes and we want to test and compare results from this version and, for example, previous one.
Mm-hmm.
So would it be possible to run different versions at the same time?
That's not currently planned. We thought about that, so that's something that we thought that at some point of time might be needed. The DAG versioning right now is focused more on being able to track the historical executions and eventually like rerun historical execution using the same version that was used for those historical versions. There is no it will it is possible. It will be possible in the future to do this kind of comparisons, but we still for those kind of comparisons we still think that the kind of dynamic DAG generation is much better approach, because you can configure your DAGs to produce different variants of the same DAG from single Python code and run them as different DAGs and compare them this way. So like you have the same source, the same pretty much the same source of truth, and then some parameters that you can configure your DAG and generate several different DAGs from that and run them in parallel. This is possible even now. You don't really have to do the DAG versioning for that one. Yeah. But in the future, yes, that's let's say we do a lot of changes, and what is not. We moved a lot of things from 3.0 to later, and that's one of the things that yes we've heard, and we will probably make it possible at some point of time. Yes.
Is there any support for testing of those dynamic DAGs creation?
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that you some best practices or even some support?
Yeah.
How to test them?
So the question was, is there a possibility to test those dynamic DAG generation and general DAG testing? Yes, Airflow already has quite a good support for testing DAGs. There is like DAG test command. There are some ways how to run DAGs, Airflow DAGs with the like PyTest, generally using a unit test framework in CI, and lots of people are doing that. So it's actually the changes between 2.0 and 2.10 that we have right now, they added quite a lot of options there if you haven't tried it, and if you tried it before, maybe the options were not there. But DAG testing in general there is a whole kind of big page describing the best practices and the way how you can test things in Airflow. So it's already there. There are no particular improvements that we plan for Airflow 3.0 in that area. I don't think so. Yes.
Once again, me. For example, when we have 100 DAGs already in Airflow or more, and we want to migrate now to Airflow 3, do you think it is worth to keep this old DAGs in Airflow 2 and build new in Airflow 3, or to migrate from this 2 to 3? And if we want to migrate, we need to persuade our managers it's worth to put this burden
Mm-hmm.
to actually upgrade. What is the first thing we need to watch out for when migrating?
So the process of migration will be is defined in the way that you should first upgrade Airflow to 2.11, which is kind of bridge release. Then in this version you can continue running whatever you had been running without any changes, and everything should work. So should be fully backwards compatible. And then for everything that you that will be needed to migrate to Airflow 3, you will get deprecation warnings that you will have to fix. So you just go and fix them in this 2.11 version first, one by one, gradually, if you need. And then there will be also a migration tool that you will be able to run on your DAGs that will execute hundreds of tests, of checks. We will see if you are not using things that are kind of extraordinary or things that we don't really want to support anymore, even if they were accidentally supported and things like that. So you'll be able to correct them there. So the idea is that in 2.11, if you have no warnings running of your DAGs, no warnings generated, you should be able to just migrate all of it in a single go if you want. People choose different strategies depending how critical their workflows are. They can sometimes, move the DAGs which are less critical first to second platform, see how they work, and like do a staging environment to migrate first. And this is a very good strategy, especially if you have a lot of them. But generally speaking, the goal is that you should be able to migrate everything fairly quickly, like without a long period where you start new DAGs in Airflow 3 and continue running them in Airflow 2. That's not recommend, or not something that we want people to do, basically. Like or not something we recommend them to do either, because of like security issues, because of all these things will be happening more and more frequently, and new features added in Airflow 3. And if you stay for a long time in Airflow 2, you won't be able to use those as well.
Yeah, one second. So now about assets. So it's a new thing in other orchestration is already used.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, how Airflow think about assets. What is it? What the asset is? How should I imagine? Is it like a product of the DAG? Is it like a table? Is it like a file? How I should imagine this?
Asset is an object you operate on. It might be a data set, as it used to be named in Airflow, which means like a file somewhere on S3, or it might be like machine learning model. So that also answers your question before, like assets, machine learning models you will be able to define as assets. How to think about that is like, I would say DAGs will, if you convert and if you start using assets as your kind of first class citizen, which will be possible in Airflow, it's already there actually. I mean, you can already start doing that. If you use assets as a first class citizen, then it will be like DAGs and tasks operating on assets. Yeah, like traditionally it was like Airflow was more like tasks producing some outputs and getting some inputs, and right now, in this new world of Airflow, new world of Airflow 2 right now, which we already have, but more of that and more asset-centric experience in Airflow 3, you will be able to think of assets as of DAGs as something that operate, or tasks that operates on the assets, and think asset-centric in an asset-centric way. That's going to be.
So one DAG can have like operates on multiple of assets.
Yes. Yes, multiple can produce and generate and get as an input multiple assets, produce multiple assets. Even now you can combine the assets so that like several assets are inputs to particular tasks. Even like the big difference between Airflow 3 will be that you will be able to have assets also as task inputs. So you'll be able to have dependencies between, let's say, assets produced in one DAG. In one task to be inputs in particular tasks in another DAG. That will be possible in the future.
Tasks can still be tasks, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like task is just operating on the assets in this case, if you're using assets, yes.
How the support for other languages will be as will it just create another pod with different environments for different.
Mhm. So how the support for different languages will look like. So Airflow doesn't define deployment and pod on its own. So tasks, so what support for different languages will be just a task SDK that will allow your task written in native language to, like, for example, pull connections and pull definitions of variables, or push outputs or XCOM data or like assets from within the native task without going through Python layer, basically. But how you run it, it really depends on the executor of yours and on the deployment of yours. So for example, when you have this edge executor, you can have agent running the executing those tasks on the, let's say, small machine without having pods at all, without having Kubernetes at all. Like, that's not really needed. It might just execute as, like, each of the tasks will be executed as a separate process on the edge executor. But it doesn't, like, there's completely, Airflow is completely agnostic from the, like, whether things are pods or whether they are deployed, you know, somewhere. Airflow doesn't manage that.
So it's compiles to some bytecode or something? How it works?
So in case of native languages, depending on the language, like Go will compile a static binary. You will be able to run this static binary as a task, and Edge Executor will just run them simply like a process whenever it's needed, and they will be pass it enough information through the SDK so that they can communicate natively with Airflow. Yeah.
Time's up. So the last question, and we need to finish.
From business side, or some kind of user case, I see Google Cloud, Azure, Amazon, and how about SIP technology, for example? Do you know about something, user case, or integration, or support for SIP?
I did hear about people doing that, and there is like Airflow is so flexible that it's used in many different places that we have no idea about. One of the cases that I'm always referring to is like Cloudflare told us that they are managing the whole infrastructure with Airflow. Like whenever you create a new domain, it runs workflows in Airflow, and they build their own extensions. So Airflow is extendable. So quite possible someone has SAP integrations with Airflow. Yeah, but it's not like native. So the thing for us also, we are a really community-driven project, an Apache Software Foundation, and we release open source software, but also we make it possible for anyone else to produce their own integrations. We call them providers. It's very likely they internally, if the user asks for Airflow, and lots of, yeah, I know like the BMC, for example, you know, they have like Control-M software. They have a very good integration with Airflow. They developed it themselves because their users asked for Airflow integration. So it's very likely SAP gets them too.
Okay, that's all. Thank you. Anyone who asked questions and wants JetBrains or any tool from them license for a year